Hi, in today's episode, we have Eshan Sharma. Eshan is the founder of Karwaan, which Eshan will tell us about. What is very interesting for me is that Eshan is a history student and a history buff, which is very rare in today's time. He conducted his first successful walk with the famous Suhail Hashmi, which was to Tughlaqabad in the month of September 2019. But currently, due to the pandemic, Karwa is not organizing walks. Rather, they've been organizing webinars from April 2020, which he's going to tell us more about. They have invited very prominent historians, and the interactions have been shared on their Facebook and YouTube Live. Karwa has successfully also hosted historians like Romila Thapar, Professor Andre Work, Rana Safi, and many others. More than 30,000 people are now associated with Karwa. But to me, in this whole world where everyone is just struggling to get their seat into the medical colleges and into the engineering colleges, it is so refreshing to meet somebody like Eshan. And you're my first student on my podcast, Eshan, who is pursuing history with the kind of passion that you have. So before we start talking to each other, to me, I just feel that Indian history definitely deserves attention as more than just being that battleground and playground, with the conquerors and the emperor and, who won which war and the dates that we had to remember forever. So, what is your take? And do you think that the books would need change? How did you choose history? Where are you from, Ishan? And like I said, you're my first student on the podcast. So, please let the listeners know all about this. Welcome, Ishan, today.
Hi, Mohua. Pleasure to be here. Yes, history is very important, because when the present regimes all over the world seek legitimacy from the past, it becomes very important for the people to also understand how past works in the present also. So it is a constant dialogue between the past and the present, which we have to understand. And unfortunately, we do not do that. That is one reason why we have to suffer a lot, and we are victims of our own past, unfortunately.
Why would you say that, Ishan? I'd like you to explain a little bit more as to when you say that we don't want to accept and understand or read our past. Is it because everybody just wants to forget what happened day before yesterday and continue to look forward? Is that why it is?
No, they do remember what happened, but many of us have a very romanticized idea of history uh, through WhatsApp and other sources. They do not read up books, unfortunately. There's a whole propaganda that goes on that shows Indian ancient past as a golden age, which I personally do not feel there was a golden age. So the need of the hour is to read up professional historians whom we do not respect, like professors like Professor Romera Thapar, Irfan Habib, and other historians. We have to read them, and it is very important to read them actually, rather than just taking your information from WhatsApp forwards.
Is that a struggle for you, Ishan? Because you are really among a whole lot of people who are really digitally educated, and reading of books and libraries are really very old-fashioned. And I don't know how many people really queue up outside a library and go and sit there. I mean, you'll be able to throw more light on this.
Yes, the only constant in this universe is time and change. So with time, technologies have evolved, and now you have ebooks more readily available than books. So people do not really go out and line up for bookstores to when they release books. I do line up. I do surely visit the bookstores. That is my favorite place after all. And I am a book holder, so I get a lot of books from bookstores, different bookstores. People of my generation who are in their 20s right now, early 20s and late teens, they might understand this, uh, because ebooks are more accessible, and they do not carry any weight. So people usually read up ebooks, and I do not have any problem with that. But the problem is, um, but the main question is not a problem, but a question is, they should read up either through ebooks or through paperbacks, hardcovers. The main thing is, we have stopped reading. We do not read. That habit of reading has gone, unfortunately, with the passing of time. Like our grandparents' generation read a lot of books. They have piles of books with them. They have read Urdu books, Hindi books, English books. Unfortunately, we cannot go any further from our textbooks, but we have to again reignite that
Do you really think that
habit.
it can be reignited? Because the way everybody is really now, the new thing is audio. People don't even want to open up a book; they want to listen, and and then they want to retain that in their brain because books are all turning into audiobooks. And for me, I of course come from a time when we did not have access to the digital world, and television happened when I was in school. But then it was way later, and so books were the only thing that we could resort to, books or painting or music. Those are the things that we could. And I love the smell of new books. I love going into a bookstore and browsing through the number, the cover that's done, and then the content that's put there together. So but I do feel that in today's time, this would be a struggle to be who you are, Ishan. And do you feel that there's a problem in the dialogue between you and students of and kids of your age?
I don't think so because, as I said, technologies have evolved and audiobooks. I also subscribe to audiobooks, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever you think. I also listen to audiobooks when I
No,
go to
I'm just
sleep.
being romantic about it because, I mean, that's the kind of nostalgia that we've had. For sure, audiobooks make more sense, for the paper and for the wood and the rest of the entire, environment. Yes. But also the way you're like really canvassing about books and reading, and like you rightly said, that there are very few people who read anymore. Would it be a problem for you to explain yourself? Because history is so important, even if you're a math major, you're doing your engineering, you're doing your medical. History is a very important part for you to be part of today's politics also. For us to understand from where what happens. So do you feel that there's a gap in your equation with the students who are your friends, or has things changed today and people are opening up to the importance of understanding where we come from?
uh, you see, Mohua, it's a very good question, but it's a very complex question to answer because you cannot ever make an ignorant understand history. If he is hellbound to not read up, if he's hellbound to not understand the history, but a mythology, but you cannot really do anything. But my friends and people whom I know, they have changed their ways of understanding and perceiving history, our past, in a very different way after they started reading books. And our mission in Karwaan is also to promote professional history, books, and authors and historians for a larger public. And even if it is through ebooks, even if it is through audiobooks, that's not a matter of worry. But I think we should be happy that they're starting to read. At least people of my generation. I'm more doubtful about people who are in their 50s right now, who are the most what you can say compulsive users of WhatsApp, a daily customer of WhatsApp University. They are the main issue. They are unfortunately believing in WhatsApp history and not the professional, version of history.
I
That needs
have
to
to
be
laugh
changed.
at that, the WhatsApp history. So tell me a little bit more about Karwa. I would really like to know. I'd like all our listeners to know about Karwa because it's such an interesting thing that you've done, and you've really gathered so many people in this entire, work. How did you think about, creating this, and what was the reason behind it? Tell us that moment of epiphany for you.
I studied in Kanpur in Uttar Pradesh, and there you do not have any heritage walks or whatsoever. So you are taught history in a classroom, which is a very regressive idea, but it is a norm in every school. Students are taught history in a closed classroom with four walls and door closed, so that the science teacher cannot listen what you are teaching in your history class, or the math teacher who is passing by the class cannot listen to what is being taught in the history class. That's the main problem. So when I went to Delhi University for my graduation, which I successfully did and graduated last week,
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So when I got into Delhi University, the Al Singh College, I discovered that not even history students are interested in history. They are just there to get a certificate or get a degree and just forget about what is being taught. So I thought, why not we should start some heritage walks? Maybe uh, gather four or five friends of ours and just go to some place and visit that place. Talk about the architecture, the surrounding, the iconography, symbolism in the architecture, whatever we have read through books. In that way, I met during a book launch somewhere. I met one of my mentors, Sohail Hashmi, who leads Delhi Heritage Walks in Delhi, and he's one of the most famous heritage activists in Delhi. So we met, and I invited him to lead. We used to call it Walk the Talk, and later I renamed it as Karwaan, the Heritage Exploration Initiative. So Sohail Saab very kindly accepted my invitation. He led our first official walk, and we had about 14, 15 students from different colleges joining us. So that was the beginning of Karwan. I started it with an aim to promote our heritage. We do not really visit heritage sites anymore. People often go to Lodhi Gardens, but for other purposes, not for
I'm
not
sorry,
for
but I have to
exploring.
laugh at that because I'm from Delhi and I know what are the other purposes that people go to Lodi Garden. But you cannot deny the fact that that is also a public space, you know. It is
That
a
is.
public space for people who live in very, very, confined spaces because during winters, I'm a Delhi girl, and during winters, people do their picnics, they pack their bags and with food and they go and, lay out that sheet. Because I think also when you stay in a city, you take the architecture, you take the fort, you take the monuments, you take all of that for granted. And like you rightly said, that history is really taught inside the classrooms. And, people, what saddens me is this, that people don't hesitate to actually write their names down on the, walls there, because the understanding of heritage and history is really abysmally low, in India. So this is
Yes.
yes, so this is very interesting, so that's the reason, Ishan, when I heard about Karwan, and I said, I need to talk to you and figure out. It'll be lovely for the listeners to tell us one of the, iconic, to be the iconic places in Delhi would be Qutub Minar, would be Lodi Garden, the Lodi tomb, also the Humayun tomb, which is absolutely stunning. And apart from that, there are so many more. So tell me, you can pick up any one of them and just share with our listeners a little bit about the architecture, the entire, the way they've created and built it years back, where it's still held together in spite of the sun, the moon, the rain, the storm, and all the ravages all around it. The air that is passed, through the places, the sunlight that passes through those places, the way gender was also divided when you go into the, inside the fort, there is a space separately for women, and there's, where they got together, and there was a space separately for the men. So maybe just one, heritage fort that you would wish to share with our listeners. I'd love to hear that from you, Ishan.
That would be very academic for the listeners, but my favorite places in Delhi include a place called Sundar Nursery, which is next to Humayun's tomb, and also Humayun's tomb, because there is a lot of symbolism and architecture. It's an iconic building. Humayun's tomb is an iconic
It
building. If
is.
you haven't been there, those places were also refugee camps when India partitioned in 1947. So it has a lot of material memory for people who survived partition. It has a lot of memories for people who have been to Delhi, and you know because that is one of the first places that you visit after Qutub Minar. Yeah, these are my two favorite places, and if you've been there, you will understand how beautiful that is. You cannot really understand with this podcast. You have to visit that. But
Let's
uh,
take people through that trip. So let me tell you about Humayun tomb. Again, of course, like you said, that there is a, there were people after partition, they came in and settled there. But for our listeners who have not traveled to Delhi, I still remember going in for a festival there of Muzaffar Ali, and he had done this festival with Abida Parveen and Asad Debu, who's now the late Asad Debu. And the entire fort was lit up. It was on a full moon night, and there's a little moat there. And the moat is
Hmm.
still there. They'd filled it up with water, and there was, water lilies there. And Asad Debu actually submerged with his entire, the angarakha that he wore, and he was like this flower inside that water. And then, of course, in the night, one could hear Abida Parveen sing. And it was like the silhouette of the fort at the back. And right now, when I'm talking to you, I can see it. I sat there mesmerized because Delhi used to have such amazing cultural festivals in the forts. Also in Qutub Minar, there's to be, music shows, I think, for people to also go in and sit and enjoy those places. So coming back to Humayun Tomb, tell us, what is it that makes it is spectacular? The fountains, those little things that they built. I mean, one can, when you go there, one can look back at the opulence, the decadence, of how the kings would have lived. So it is a very, very Islamic architecture because of the way it is built. Tell us a little bit more about what is it that's so special for you for Humayun Tomb.
I would not agree with the term Islamic architecture for various reasons, because there is nothing called Islamic architecture. Because what are the three main elements of Islamic architecture that we perceive? There's this arch,
The
there
arch,
is
yes.
dome,
Hmm.
and there is minarets.
Yes.
Three features that we call Islamic architecture. But if you go to through history, arches were made by the Romans. Minarets are not Islamic. You won't see any minaret in any of the mosques anywhere in the world. You'll only find it in India. In Delhi, they didn't have a minaret. The purpose of minaret in a mosque, as told by many people, is to call people for the prayers.
The azan.
Yeah. But if you ever go to a go to the top of a minaret and speak from there, nobody can hear you, you know. And I was talking about the arch. So the Romans were the first builders in Europe, perhaps the first in the world, to fully appreciate the advantage of the arch, the vault, and the dome. The earliest arches used in churches were of the Romanesque style, that is, rounded or semicircular in the same way that the classic Roman arches were shaped. Domes, the most important feature of the Islamic architecture as we perceive, have been found from early Mesopotamia, which may explain the form spread. They are found in Persia, Hellenistic, Roman Empire, Chinese architecture in the ancient world, as well as among a number of contemporary indigenous building traditions. So the domes of European Renaissance architecture spread from Italy in the early modern period, while domes were frequently employed in Ottoman Empire at the same time. So you'll see domes in many churches in Europe. So all these things are made by all these three elements we have now eliminated. So we cannot call it an Islamic architecture. But yes, um, Humayun's tomb was commissioned during the reign of Jalaluddin Akbar, Akbar the Great. 6 years after Humayun slipped on the staircase of his personal library and observatory, this massive mausoleum contains about 100 graves, the most famous being of Humayun's. And you see it is constructed in sandstone and white marble between, I think, 1560s, 70s. You know, so the most intriguing aspects of Humayun's tomb is the prevalence of the six-pointed star, a hexagram, the same which is commonly associated with Judaism today. And therefore it is particularly striking. So these are some symbolism, iconography that is present. The star is also represented as Shakti in Hindu traditions. So it is not particularly a Islamic feature. Star is also there as Star of David in Islam and Christianity and other religions. So the choice of hexagon symbol was likely Akbar's, since there is no record of Humayun's use of this symbol as a kind of homage to his father's, um, you know, love for astrology. So I think that symbolography and that iconography is my favorite part of the whole architecture. So that is, if you are ever visiting Humayun, just notice these things. I think it will be interesting for all the listeners to just visit Humayun's tomb after this conversation.
Absolutely. I will go and search for it for sure because I don't think I took, I noticed it. And like you rightly said, that we took history just within the closed, classroom doors and, whatever was given to us in the book. And we had to pass the exam because I don't know too many kids who really took up history. And, we invariably, as a humanities student, you thought of economics or you thought of English, but history was always like the second subject in choice. And I think it's that really puts us at such a, it sets us back. We're not being academically we don't academically understand history and its nuances and the things that affects today's world and today's conversation, politically and historically, as to how history itself is culture. So, tell me a little bit more, Ishan, about Kanpur and what was that influence for you for history? Was it your parent, or how did you just decide to choose history as a subject?
From a very young age, I've been reading history books thanks to my grandfather, who used to read books for me and who used to tell me many, many anecdotes from Indian history and Bollywood history, especially Hindi cinema's history. So that intrigued me to really get into reading more quiz books and more history books at a very young age. And also considering the fact that I was not too good in science, so I made this decision to study humanities with the aim to do civil services, to get into the services and be an IAS officer or whatnot. That was my initial motivation of joining humanities, because after all, because of the stereotypes and what we think about humanities, it is not a very charming field,
I think
especially
things are
for
changing
young.
now, Ishan.
It's changing
It
now
is
for the good,
changing now
yes.
for really for the good because I mean I remember as a child I hated mathematics and I was obviously inclined towards humanities, but everybody, they just don't want to give you that, that whole sense of unworthiness you feel when you're among everybody who's like applying for the engineering colleges or the medical colleges, and here you're sticking out like a sore thumb because you like literature. So, but I know I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic about the new generation. I think we are really going to have a generation that's going to be so much more aware, so much more, because I think COVID also has been such a learner for a lot of people. I know it's been really bad for the economy for a whole lot of people who've lost their lives, but also at a certain level, I think people have started going back to our roots, and there's been this huge, hue and cry, I think, in the Indian media about made in India, learn about India, travel within India. I would think that people are going back and trying to understand where we come from. And that would also give us a context as to who we are as human beings in the years to go ahead. And so, if people were to get in touch, so tell me, the Karwaan that you do, are the heritage walks only in Delhi or is it elsewhere in India too?
It's only in Delhi and it's only for students.
Okay, तो मतलब हम नहीं आ सकते वहाँ
Yes,
पे. But now that
unfortunately.
now that I'm in your podcast, you have to give me that special
Yes,
turn.
definitely. Be our guest. Yes.
Yes, I will be your guest, and I would love to do the walk with you because I took all of those places for granted. And it's now that I am in Bangalore, I really miss. So when I go down to Delhi, I make it a point to go and visit some of the places, and I'm just standing in awe, looking back at the colossal work that that just stares right ahead at you, and you transport it into time which you cannot understand or even use the greatest of your intellect to delve into the meticulousness with which the monuments were built and the forts were built, and how the entire sewage system to the air to everything that was done. So Ishan, this has been an honor for me because you're the first student who's on my podcast, and to me, I'm so optimistic with young kids like you, if I may use that word, with young people like you, who I know is going to be the torch bearer for us going ahead. And if people were to find you in Delhi and they were to get in touch with you, how should they go about it? Please share with us your details, Eshan.
Sure. So, those who thought this was interesting, thank you so much.
Everybody will
Uh,
find this interesting, Eshan. Everybody, all my listeners will. Yes,
Let's hope for the best.
absolutely.
And you all can get in touch with me through Instagram and Facebook, or just simply write to me through email. Our email address is Karwaan, Karwan, heritage @gmail.com. And we'll get back to you. I'll get back to you as soon as I get your email. So that's the best way to reach out to me.
So you can find Eshan on karwanheritage@gmail.com. Karwan spelled with KarwanHeritage@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Eshan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mohua.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services. Find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course, all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are Moody Mo Awaz Podcast, where Hatke is hot.